Frio, the cold river, flows into Lake Nicaragua, the largest in Central America. Our destination is an archipelago in the lake called the Solentiname Islands. This part of the country is extremely wet. Boats are the primary means of transportation. In the 1960s, a Catholic priest came to this remote spot, a man who, like no other, came to personify Latin America's struggle for social justice. His books are known the world over, among them the Gospel of Solentiname. His themes are poverty, injustice and oppression.
Somos el centro de América, la más reciente esperanza, la misma sangre, el mismo sentir, patria libre o morir.
Esperanza Guevara grew up in the Solentiname Islands. She's known Ernesto Cardenal since she was a little girl. Now she helps to look after the 88-year-old poet who brought together in word and deed the ideas and aspirations of Jesus Christ, Karl Marx and Che Guevara.
I
came here in 1966 to found a little community, and we had it for some 12 years, until the revolution took us away to work for the cause.
As Esperanza Guevara and many other Nicaraguans remember it today, revolution also meant war and death. Her brother Alejandro fell while fighting for its ideals. Esperanza was already a faithful Catholic, but Ernesto Cardenal fundamentally changed the nature of that faith.
I was just a little girl when Ernesto Cardenal came to Solentiname. The situation here was desolate, really desolate. The only sins were smoking, drinking, being unmarried and swearing. According to our religion, that was serious. It's true.
In this church, Ernesto Cardenal studied the Gospels with the peasants of Solentiname.
At that time, we were living under the Somoza regime, and we realized that it was a bloodthirsty dictatorship. We read the Gospels, and we young people not only read them, but commented on them too. And we concluded that we had to act. We had no other choice but to take up arms against Somoza.
This was liberation theology encouraged by Ernesto Cardenal.
I'm a poet, a priest, and some say a politician, but I call myself a revolutionary.
After 10 years of civil war, the revolution in Nicaragua was simply voted down. Had the struggle for its ideals been in vain?
Some things from the revolution have remained. The army, for instance. It's a fabulous army, the best we could have, whether in Latin America or the world. An army that identifies with the people. The people have no fear of or aversion to the military. They know the army is a part of the people. It still seems like a miracle. The police force too. The police force has remained, and it's not corrupt.
From Solentiname, the guerrilleros launched their first successful attack on Somoza's troops. They rode across the lake the whole night through, landing in San Carlos at dawn. The Sandinistas' first small victory sent a clear message that the dictatorship was vulnerable.
Salvador vencerá. Y Guatemala prepara ya el fusiles de libertad. Somos el centro de América, la más reciente esperanza de América. Si Nicaragua venció, El Salvador vencerá. Y Guatemala prepara ya el fusiles América, somos el nuevo amanecer. Somos el centro de América, somos el nuevo amanecer.
San Carlos and its environs are all but cut off from the rest of the country. The primary means of transport for both goods and passengers to and from the city is the ferry across the lake. Often it's the only traffic route open between the south of the country and the populous centre. Once a week, the ferry makes the run from San Carlos to Granada. It's a painstakingly slow journey. The crossing takes 17 hours. The indigenous people called the lake Casibolca, meaning sacred water. It's home to some of the world's only freshwater sawfish and sharks. Under the Somoza regime, sport fishermen hauled them out by the ton. After the revolution, the new government tried to replenish the depleted fish stocks. Today, catching a freshwater shark from the lake may carry a prison sentence. A long journey like this can change one's perception of time. Around sunrise, the ferry at last puts in to the port at Granada. Some passengers have obviously had very little sleep. Granada was once the capital of Nicaragua. In its long and turbulent history, it's been raided by pirates and destroyed by adventurers. Now the old town has been rebuilt and refurbished. The city on the lake is a weekend getaway for well-to-do citizens from Managua. Granada is about an hour's drive from the modern-day capital. But not all Nicaraguans can afford even as short a trip as that. In Nicaragua, as everywhere in Central America, the cities are growing rapidly, giving rise to poor neighborhoods around their edges. Sector 6 in the east of Managua is now home to about 1 million people. The neighboring republics are cracking down hard on teenage gangs, but here the revolutionary police are trying for a de-escalation.
The majority of the young people come from troubled homes, many with only the mother remaining. Many of them have experienced violence and abuse as children. Their parents might have drug problems. Their families are poor and dysfunctional. So for most, their level of education is very low. In this sector, for instance, the average level is only second grade. We've even got young people here who are illiterate.
The police here use sport as a preventative measure against violence. The former residence of the dictator Anastasio Somoza now houses the Nicaraguan National Police Academy. On Sundays, teams of street kids and police cadets face off on the playing field.
Well, I started running with gangs at about the age of 15. Running with gangs means violent conflict with other street kids. I went to prison several times. I just recently got out after a 4.5-year stretch. Then the police comrades showed up and talked with us and our families, and since then we've been working together.
Nicaragua's entire security apparatus was replaced and overhauled after the revolution. The chief of police believes in the revolution's ideals.
It's a force with revolutionary origins and principles, with principles of humanity, solidarity, esprit de corps, and a great deal of sincerity and professionalism. We've been working for some 30 years to ensure that this police force maintains these principles, while at the same time it maintains its professional quality.
The program aimed at preventing violence appears to be working. Now other Central American republics are starting to follow its example. This road leads past extinct volcanoes to the next stop at Intipucá in El Salvador. Intipucá is a typical migrant workers' settlement in one of El Salvador's poorest regions. In the mid-1960s, people from Intipucá began moving to the more prosperous north in search of work paid in dollars. Men of working age are seldom seen here. Over the village PA system, a preacher sermonizes for hours on end. Pentecostals and other sects have found many followers here. The people of Intipucá know how important the dollars from the north are. They've even put up a monument to the first villager who left in search of a paying job, their first migrant worker. In recent years, many of the older workers have been returning home with the dollars they've saved to enjoy their retirements in their own village. Hugo Salinas of the conservative PCN party has just been elected mayor. The walls still bear slogans from the recent campaign. Intipucá's officials have their share of problems to deal with.
One of the biggest problems is that the school kids are losing interest in studying. We have problems with violence, with gangs and extortion. We also have very serious problems with families increasingly caught up in a net of dysfunctionality.
The mayor has his own experience with dysfunctional families. He was 9 when his father left for the United States, for the first time.
I arrived in Washington on July 7th, 1968. 2.5 years later, I came back here, and then left for the U.S. again in 1973. My wife stayed here to take care of the kids.
Now Leonel's son, the mayor, lives next door. Hugo sees the often protracted absence of fathers as a fundamental problem.
For just this reason, I would prefer that the families not separate. If something is missing at home, if the children don't have discipline or praise from a father, or their mother isn't around, they can choose the path of violence or sexual addiction, prostitution or drug addiction. But they could also choose a path that would let them set an example for society.
As mayor, Hugo Salinas intends to set some examples of his own. His working days are always full. His next task is to fix up a car to drive a beauty queen who will represent Intipucá in an upcoming pageant. Hugo Salinas is bisexual. It took courage for him to come out of the closet in this conservative society.
In fact, the history of our community reveals that gays or bisexuals have always been involved in every aspect of our development, but many people still hide themselves away. I think I'm the first and only openly gay public figure in El Salvador. There are many, many more gays, but that's not the point here. The fact that I've been open about it for years played a part in my winning the election in such a closed society.
El Salvador is a small and very poor country. For many, the only real means of transportation is the bus. Even with all the dollars brought home by the migrant workers, not many people in Intipucá can afford a car. San Salvador is not far away, but the drive there can take up to 3 hours. The streets of the capital are not safe by any standards. With an average of 10 fatalities a day, it has one of the highest murder rates on Earth. Carla, Ada and Xochitl live in the Apopa district on the edge of town. Violence is part of their daily lives. As teenagers, they took a video course and learned to chronicle their world with a camera. Today, they produce a regular TV program with an audience of 20,000 on cable. The question for this opinion poll is, how can we scale back the violence?
Create more jobs for people.
With jobs more than anything else, and sports. Only that way.
And that concludes our opinion poll. We hope you found the answers the public gave us satisfactory. The violence we see in Apopa is not only a crisis here, but all over the world.
The young women acquired their media skills from a non-governmental organization called ACISAM.
We started out as a video group formed by the city government. They approached the young people, saying they wanted to form a video group. Then ACISAM came and gave us training in camera, editing and reporting. So that's how we got started.
The German Workers' Welfare Federal Association supports ACISAM's efforts, and the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation provides funding. The aim is to give young people from troubled areas and backgrounds prospects for their future. The concept has since been copied by many other such projects throughout the region. Our journey continues to Flores in Guatemala. Flores lies on an island in the midst of the Petén Rain Forest, a region known for its many ruins dating to the Mayan Classic Age. "25 years ago, Flores was a sleepy backwoods village. Today it's the principal starting point for archaeological expeditions and archaeology tourists alike. Most head for nearby Tikal. Flores also markets arts and crafts, mostly weavings made following Maya traditions hundreds of years old. German architect Dieter Zimmer owns and operates an archaeological cafe. Zimmer first came to Guatemala as a student in 1996 and joined the Cultural Triangle, a vast archaeological and restoration project at 3 main sites. Dieter Zimmer knows the area like the back of his hand, including remote sites where no tourist ever goes, among them Niche Tun Chich, known to most others only as a cow pasture.
There are very straight lines there. No natural mountain looks like that. There are very obviously Mayan buildings under the soil.
The entire region is littered with silent relics of the ancient civilization. Dieter Zimmer takes us up one of the interestingly shaped hills.
I'd estimate this is about 1,200 years old. Decorated. It has the original red paint. We'll just put that back.
The next morning, Dieter hops in his 4x4 and heads out to one of the Cultural Triangle's excavation sites. The dig is somewhere deep inside the Petén Rain Forest, or what's left of it. Wherever you look, there are herds of cows busily grazing the vegetation down to the roots. The beef is intended for export. And if it's not cattle, it's people slashing and burning the rainforest to make new farmland. The once vast Petén is shrinking rapidly. The rainforest is intact only where restrictions are enforced to keep it that way. Around the excavation sites, for example.
¿Tu papá o alguien? No hay nadie. No hay nadie. Buenos días.
This is where Dieter Zimmer's interest in Mayan sites turned into fascination. We run into a former leader of the dig, showing around a group of architecture students.
Hola, buenos días.
Gracias por el salón, maestro.
¿Cómo están?
Todos arquitectos.
Todos arquitectos.
Todos del máster.
Dieter shows them a photo from not so long ago.
Oscar, por si les quieres mostrar algo de antes.
Aquí ves una miradita cómo estaba el sitio antes.
Aquí pues estaba.
Y papi andaba aquí controlando.
The Cultural Triangle is the largest project ever conceived for the excavation and preservation of Mayan ruins. For years it was funded through a close cooperation between the Guatemalan government and the German State Development Bank, KfW.
The first time I came here, everything was completely hidden by jungle. You didn't see any architecture exposed anywhere. All that's only happened because of Oscar's project. It's been unearthed, restored, and rescue operations are being carried out to preserve the cultural heritage.
Is preserving the cultural heritage the archaeologist's primary objective?
I'm an architect. That's the difference. Archaeologists dig tunnels to find graves and analyze structures and figure out how they were designed and built. And normally we take care of preserving and stabilizing the buildings and then conserving and restoring what we can.
Dieter Zimmer takes us farther into the excavation field. The drive through the rainforest can often be fairly arduous. Deep within the Petén, nature is still largely untouched. Jaguars are becoming a rarity. But the treetops are alive with missions of howler monkeys. The mystery of why the Mayan civilization collapsed has still not been entirely solved.
A large part of the fascination is the mystery, the adventure behind it. The mystery is we still don't know why it collapsed. But they established an incredibly advanced civilization with vast sites free of jungle overgrowth. What we see here today had nothing to do with it.
As long as tourists keep coming to the Petén to see the once-lost Mayan cities and keep bringing in tourist cash, there's hope that the destruction of the primeval forest may be held in check. In the next part of the series, the journey goes on to Cancun, Mexico.